Hey everyone, and welcome to lesson 3 of chapter 5, where we'll be talking about pre-announcement endorsements. Now you might be wondering, what the heck is that? So we'll get into exactly what it is and how to go about doing it in this lesson. So in a nutshell, it is getting the support of notable figures in your community or in political circles before you announce your candidacy. And there's a whole art to this that we'll be getting into. So why would you want to line up the support of notable figures in your community before you even announce your candidacy? And why is this necessary? Well, a few reasons. The first, credibility. So when you announce your candidacy, there will more than likely be a lot of people wondering, who the heck is this guy? Who's Chris Moore? If you say, hey, I'm Chris Moore and I'm running for office, and Mayor Smith supports me, the local Chamber of Commerce supports me, the executive director of the women's shelter supports me, you get the idea. It provides credibility to your name and your candidacy right from the get-go. Another reason is for announcement optics. So when you announce your candidacy at an event, maybe you have a big campaign kickoff party and you're up there on the stage. These are people that can literally, like physically be on the stage with you. It just looks good. Looks good for the announcement. And the third is this idea of clearing the field. So if you're a political hack, you probably know this term, but essentially it means before campaign season has really picked up, before people have really announced their campaigns, you line up institutional support and get a lot of momentum going behind your campaign in a halfway covert way, and it discourages other people from running. So if there's a handful of other people I know that are interested in running for Sutter County Supervisor in my district, my good old hypothetical example, as if I'm running for Sutter County Supervisor back in Northern California, my hometown. Anyway, so I'm running for Sutter County Supervisor, and I know that a girl named Jane Lee is running, and also a guy named Josh Moore. That's my best friend when I was little, and my brother, Josh Moore, that they're running as well. Well, if I line up the support of the Chamber of Commerce, the current sitting mayor, our congressman, the fire chief, the police chief, if I line up all of these people, then it's going to discourage Jane and Josh from running for that seat. That's the idea of clearing the field. It can be done with endorsements, like I just outlined, or with money, or ideally a combination of both. So those are the reasons that you would want to line up these pre-announcement endorsements. So now let's talk about how you actually do it. But first, a tip before you start this process early. So I'm not sure how to answer the question, is there a time that's too early to do this? I suppose there is, but I don't quite know how to outline that. So start as early as you are able to. And you can start once you have, in our course here, if you're using this course as your guide to orchestrating your campaign, which I'm assuming you are if you're watching this, once you have the campaign message locked down and you have that 2-minute, 1-minute, 30-second, those spiels all ironed out and really, really iron tight, then you can start talking to people about supporting your campaign and doing these pre-endorsement announcements. So right when you have that stuff ironed out, start these conversations. So that means you're gonna need to start your whole campaign pretty early if you wanna line these up early on. Okay, so now a step-by-step guide to how you do this. And guys, this is just a really, really practical, tactical guide. It's things that are straightforward, but if you haven't thought about it, it might not come together as seamlessly as you would imagine. So take a second to really think this through and come back to this when you start this. So number one, make a list of high-profile community figures and go broad. So think about like local business leaders, local organization, like local nonprofit organizations, local associations, local elected officials. Think about anything in your community that you kind of see around. You could go to, like if there's a good sized baseball park in your town, and look at the advertisements that are out on the fence and the outfield. Those are high profile community businesses and organizations. Also look at where you could look at other elected officials' campaign websites and see the people that have endorsed them. But the idea is to make a big list of people. I was talking about local businesses and local organizations earlier. I mean, find those local businesses, those local organizations, and then find the owners of those or the executive directors of those. And those are the types of people that you want to add on this list. So go broad, make a big list. Don't try and think through the particulars of who the person is, will they support you, that sort of thing. Just think about going broad. That should be your focus here in this first step. Make a big long list. And then number 2, go through and cross out obvious non-supporters. So when I was working in the California State Legislature and running a local political organization in Sacramento, if you were running for office as a Democrat, you were not going to get the support of sitting Republican officials, like, period. It just did not happen, at least in any of my experience. They were two separate worlds and they didn't intersect at all. It might have changed in California since then, now that they have the top 2 primary system. And that's caused a lot of different changes out there. But anyway, if you know somebody is a big giant Republican donor, Republican activist, and they're one of the people on your list and you're a Democrat, they're probably not going to support you. And so go through and cross out any obvious non-supporters. Number 3, identify a contact lead. So if the person is really high figure, or high profile rather, it might be pretty hard to even get in touch with them. So for those people, try and find a proxy person that knows them, that you have a relationship with, or an assistant that you can develop that relationship with. Somebody to be able to make that contact there, and then write that person down on your list as the contact lead for that person. 4th is set up a meeting. Just say that you are interested in speaking to them about community service, or being more involved in the community, some sort of reason like that. Don't lie and don't be shady about it, but you don't have to tell them right there in the request for a meeting that you want to run for office, but don't be shady about it. 5, meet and be cool. So I know this seems kind of silly, but the idea here is that the way you come across to this person is going to be very important in their decision to support you or not. So when you meet with them, you need to portray what we've talked about earlier in this course, like calm, cool, collected. So I believe it was chapter 1, lesson 4, but about your outward projection, your outward appearance. So go back and revisit that and make sure that you are conveying yourself as someone that is calm, cool, collected. Like I said, open to learning more, interested in listening to what that person has to say, all of those key points. You want to be confident, but also inquisitive, knowledgeable, but always looking to hear what other people know about something and hear their point of view about it. All of those aspects we talked about previously. And more than likely, if this person is a high profile person in your community, maybe they have a pretty big ego, maybe they're really successful. A lot of times those people really, really enjoy the sound of their own voice, which can be a benefit. If they want to spend their time talking about themselves, you should probably just let them. In my experience, when people talk about themselves a lot, like in a job interview, I can't tell you how many job interviews I've had where the person just talks about themselves the whole time. But that's probably what they like. So in those situations, I let the person talk about themselves a lot and go along with it, and where I can kind of sprinkle in my message of what I want to say and convey something, then I do. But I always tie it to whatever it is they were saying about themselves. So you might find yourself in a situation like that. Something else to keep in mind is to not come across like you're a salesman, like you're trying to sell them on you. This should be much more conversational, and it should be about the community. It should be about subjects and things that are happening in the community. Maybe you talk about local politics a little bit, but the idea is that you're not selling them on something. So that's a general vibe to take into this. So, you can start it off and exchange pleasantries, and then when the time seems right, you're just going to tell them, like, look, I've been thinking about this a lot and just wanted to let you know that I'm really, really heavily considering and pretty much made up my mind that I'm going to run for supervisor. Don't tell them 100% that you're running, but make it like 99% that you're running. The reason you do that is so that you can also then follow it up with this line. You can say, it would really mean a lot to me if I could get your input before I make my formal announcement and before I completely dive all the way into this. I would just really love to hear, number one, your thoughts on it, if you have any ideas about this race or where you think the county is headed. And then number two, consider supporting my candidacy. So then you leave it at that and then wait for them to react. So what's going to happen, if this person is well-versed in politics and has done this sort of thing before, they are 100% going to ask you 3 questions. The first, they're going to ask you why you are running, and you better have a polished answer to that. We've talked about it a billion times. So this is where your campaign pitch comes into play. You have to have a polished answer to that. So you give them the 2-minute spiel, or if it seems like they have a short attention span, they're tight on time, then give them the 1 minute. And then they're going to ask you who else is running and how much money you have raised or you're going to put into it. So the reason they're asking these questions is because they want to gauge the field as well. And they might already know the answers. They just want to see if you know. So you should have a good idea if other people are running, and you can talk about that. And don't put down any of those people. Just talk about it very matter-of-factly, and then talk about how much money you plan to raise or how much money you can put into it. Give them a clear view of the financial situation. So they'll probably ask you more about issues or focus more on the political side of it. And whenever it feels like the right time, you tell them, well, yeah, I'm pretty much made up my mind, and we're going to announce the candidacy. And can I count on your response? Can I count on your support? And you'll just have to ask them pointedly like that. You just have to ask, can I count on your support? And more than likely, they're going to tell you, I'll have to think about it. And, to just push it out and not give you an answer then. But they might say yes. If they say yes, then, you thank them up and down and tell them how excited you are to have them along the journey with you, to have them as part of the campaign. Make them feel like that they've just been brought into something. Not so much like they've bestowed a gift on you. Don't frame it in that way. Say oh my God, I'm so glad to have you on board with this, on this venture, and you're on this ship with us together, and so excited to set sail with you on board. That's a little cheesy, but you know what I mean. If they give you no response, then you can just thank them for being forthcoming with you, and that you appreciate them being straightforward, and you really appreciate their time, and that and then you tell them that no matter what happens in the campaign, you still want to have a great relationship with them. And hopefully you guys can continue to work together in the future. And you guys both obviously really care about your community, so you can work together more in the future to make the community a better place, something like that. If they are undecided, which they probably are, then just thank them up and down for their time, and tell them that you'll send them an email sometime to just check back in with them. And then you'll obviously want to actually send that email when the time is right. Speaking of email, that's the last step here on our step-by-step guide, is to send a follow-up email to them. So no matter what the response was, you need to follow up with them, thanking them for their time, and hopefully it was a yes response, and you're thanking them for their support and welcoming them on board to your campaign. So that's it, guys, for the lesson 3 pre-announcement endorsements. If you have any questions, as always, put them over here in the notes. This is a super important step. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time in your campaign plan for it. And yeah, and good luck to you. I hope you line up all kinds of support, clear the field, and then win it. Okay, see you in the next lesson.